not pass second reading because of there was not the political will to have it put on the agenda. So if it doesn't make it to the order paper, it doesn't come to a vote. I firmly believe that it would have come, if it had come to a vote, it would have been passed. But the official opposition in the Senate would not allow it to come before the Senate for a vote. And then, of course, we had the 2019 election. I made a decision that I would not bring it back to the Senate at that point. I thought we might have a better chance of getting it passed if it started in the House of Commons. So I started those conversations. And MP from Richmond Hill, Ontario, MP Majid Johari, he came forward as an advocate and a champion, and he introduced the motion to have Emancipation Day recognized nationally. And then COVID happened before he had an opportunity to bring that motion forward for a vote. And of course, we all know because of COVID, there have not been regular sittings in the House of Commons. But as soon as regular sittings resume, that motion will come forward for a vote. And I'm feeling very confident that that motion will receive enough votes to pass. That's a similar strategy to the strategy that the Honorable Jean Augustine used to have Black History Month nationally recognized. It was a motion, it was not a bill. So we're, revisiting history and looking at what's the best strategy, what's the best way forward. We feel this is the best way forward. And one of the unanticipated consequences, I'd say, a positive consequence of COVID, is that the 2020 celebrations of Emancipation Day have mostly been done virtually, which means that they've been more accessible to people across the country. And we've certainly been hearing from people from coast to coast to coast about the importance of Emancipation Day and the support for Emancipation Day, having that nationally recognized. Of course, there are people out there who are saying, why are we doing this? There are lots and lots of negative feedback around this, but overwhelmingly, there's a positive move forward. So I feel very confident. I have a sense of critical hope that this motion will pass. And once it passes in the House of Commons, I will introduce a similar motion in the Senate. Not that we need it, but I want to do it just so that we have both houses making a very clear statement about the national recognition of Emancipation Day. And I will stop there for now. Thank you.
Good to get a sense of sort of the legislative process for these kinds of things. And then we're going to the US now, to the other capital, the US nation's capital, because we are in the Canadian nation's capital, with Peter Haynes. Do we have Peter?
Hi, Sarah.
There you are. Hi, Peter. Yes.
Okay.
So can you tell us about your process with commemorating Emancipation Day? And can you let our audience know the difference between Emancipation Day as celebrated in different cities and Juneteenth? There's a difference.
Okay. DC District of Columbia Emancipation Day was something that my mom had. My mom was an educator, a historian, a researcher, and she helped to revive she spearheaded and envisioned and revived the actual commemoration in the early 1990s. And DC Emancipation marks the April 16th, 1862 date that President Abraham Lincoln signed the District of Columbia Emancipation Act that abolished slavery in the District of Columbia. And that was a precursor to the January 1st, 1863 Emancipation Proclamation, and also the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery, and that was ratified about December 1865. So Juneteenth was that was around June 1865, and that's when enslaved Texans they were actually aware of efforts to become free. That's the day that a general order of the army was issued by a general who came down to Texas, and it was a day that they chose to celebrate. That's June 19th, 1865. But that actual day has spread in the South, and it's one of the longest continuous celebrations, but it's not the oldest. DC Emancipation is is an older celebration, not necessarily continuous, you know. But my I was my mom's producer of these various educational events with others, historians C.R. Gibbs and Vincent DeForest, and other partners. My mom's work came to the attention of local and federal officials and the community, which took up her cause and joined in organizing DC Emancipation Day citywide events, including schools, libraries, and churches. And this was around in the early to mid 1990s. And then D.C. Mayor Anthony Williams in 2005 signed into law the April 16th D.C. Emancipation Day as a legal public holiday. In the mid 90s, there were several other churches that had worship services. The National Park Service co-sponsored events. The National Archives joined in, and what we did during that time was we always promoted the DC Emancipation Day with the January 1st, 1863 Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery, and we also promoted August 1st, 1834, the British Imperial Slavery Abolition Act 1833 that took effect on August 1st, 1834. So we always put things in context, you know, and so we look at our event as educational. It still is to this day, and our educational event series included back during that time lectures, panel discussions, symposia, conferences, musical performances, exhibits, and it's important for, I think, the performing and the visual arts to bring the commemoration alive. And along the way, we certainly were honored. That's my colleague, historian C.R. Gibbs, and I. In the early 2000s, we were presenters at the Ontario Black History Society Emancipation Day commemorations, and I've attended such August 1st Emancipation Day commemorations and Caribana in Toronto from about 2000 to 2006 and 2012 and 13. So I'm very familiar with August 1st Emancipation Day, and I'm certainly in solidarity with efforts to mark the day. And I have been watching the webinars some of the webinars over the past week, and certainly was honored to see Senator Bernard's webinar, and also watched yesterday the Owen Sound Emancipation Festival. So I'm certainly keeping in touch, and I'm trying to create awareness down here with folks in the U.S. as well as other colleagues, friends, and supporters of emancipation, African American history, and African Canadian history about this important watershed event in Canadian, North American, UK Commonwealth history.
important to see, that sort of synergy between the U.S., the Black experience and presence in the U.S. and on the other side of the
Yes.
border. And so I'm going to ask all three of you. So why is Emancipation Day more relevant than ever in 2020, in your view? Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
I think it's more important than ever because we have the unfortunate situation now where we all have the opportunity to witness a public execution. And I think you cannot move from ever seeing that. You cannot unsee a horrendous situation that has really animated people on a worldwide level. Where people may have been on the fence about wondering, believing, accepting that people of African descent are perhaps targeted or challenged, they could no longer do that. And to me, and I hate to make the comparison, but maybe it's a good one. As in the women's movement, when one individual was accused and people moved on that, and it became a Me Too movement. I think that this is another opportunity, another segment of the Me Too movement, but for the Black community. We cannot let these atrocities that have been directed to our community in particular continue. And now I think that we have to work on making sure that people of African origin are voicing their concerns and that we develop greater allyship with others so that they can also begin to learn and educate themselves.
Sure.
Let me jump in as well. I've been using the term the pandemic of COVID has collided with the pandemic of racism. Those of us who experience racism, who witness anti-Black racism, who deal with it, who deal with living while Black around the world, we always knew that anti-Black racism was real. We always knew that anti-Black racism is actually rooted in Canada. What we see in Canada is rooted in our history, and part of that history is a history of slavery, not this history of the promised land, as we've been taught. And so, with this collision of these pandemics, suddenly people around the globe are aware that, hey, anti-Black racism, this is real. The modern day lynching of Mr. George Floyd has galvanized people around the world. And I hear young people who are protesting and others, but the voice of young people keeps ringing into my consciousness. And part of what I'm hearing from them is we haven't done enough and we haven't done it fast enough. And we're running out of time. And how many more people need to be killed by the state before we see some real action? So that's why I think Emancipation Day is more relevant than